Who's excited for Enterprise Unplugged? So fired up to have all of you here. And who's even more excited for DJ Schematics? Wow, what an opening. That was just incredible. We have the pleasure of having DJ Schematics at a lot of our corporate events, and that guy just brings the energy. So hope you feel that like I do. But who's fired up to talk about Enterprise CS? Maybe I'm the only one, but I get really excited at the chance to talk about how this industry is evolving and how we can all learn from each other. And there's just this incredible community. And I think it's just going to be an awesome next couple hours. So thank you for joining us. I'm Nick Maida, CEO of Gainsight. Now, I will say, before we dive in, today is actually a special day on the calendar. If you are into internet nerdy memes, today is April 20th or 420. Some parts of the country, it's actually a big holiday and celebration. So in typical Gainsight fashion, before we dive in, we did produce a little video with some dad jokes included to get us going and get us laughing. Let's cue the video. Hey everyone, I'm so excited to have you join our Enterprise Unplugged event. We're going to be talking about the two things that never get old in customer success: keeping and growing existing customers.
I've got an idea. We're in Silicon Valley, and today just happens to be April 20th. I bet we could come up with a breakthrough idea if we go get stoned.
Is this where people get stoned these days? It looks like we're at a gem store.
Well, we might be in a gem store, but it looks like we're at least on the path to higher net retention.
Do you think they sell nachos here? I could really go for some nachos.
How do you make your product super sticky with new users?
I think our motto this year will be, let's burn this churn.
Yeah, something like, let's light this churn on fire.
Like Taylor Swift said, time turns flame into embers.
Wait, weren't we talking about product sticky ickiness?
Oh man, I just figured it out. Look, go with me for a second. Just 1 second. This came to me in a dream. I mean, it was all written down like in the clouds. Like it was just this magic writing, and like I figured it all out. I mean, this is like before like SaaS or like whatever that customer success book was. It's
one thing I've always thought about is what if we're like plugged into the metaverse?
I think you both got way too involved in the revenue pipeline.
Oh, people, it looks like we got to go back to that, I don't know, Enterprise Unplugged event or something. I don't know about you, but my head's kind of spinning. Does anyone know how to get like back there?
Nick, it's virtual. Just log into Hopin.
Oh, right. Totally. Yeah, I'll be there. I just baked some brownies and I got to get them out of the oven and maybe have a couple. So I'll see you in like a few minutes or maybe a couple hours, you know, soon. All right. Well, thanks for indulging us with that. Maybe that video was a little half baked, but we had a lot of fun making that. And I hope you get a chance to sit back now and enjoy a deep dive into customer success from some of the incredible leaders out there from an enterprise scale customer success perspective. These are the logos of the presenters you're going to be hearing from and the leaders you're going to be hearing from over the next few hours. And I've met every single one of them, and I'm inspired by all of them. I learned from all of them. And so I hope you're able to get a lot out of this session. And it's a good segue to why we created this event. Many of you know we do tons of events at Gainsight. Gosh, I feel like I'm doing an event every hour at Gainsight. We have most notably our Big Pulse conference. We do events for chief customer officers. But we decided a few months ago we need an event focused on enterprise. Because I would say every company thinks they're a little different. But enterprises are different. If you're watching, I'm guessing that sometimes if you go into the mainstream CS conversation, many things apply, but some things feel a little different. You sometimes might feel out of place. And I'm hoping over the next couple hours, you feel like you're hearing from people that have dealt with the same things that you have. And that's why we created this event. So just to give you some examples of that, right? So I think if you're doing a startup in customer success, maybe some of you have been in startups in the past, or maybe you have friends in startups leading CS. The truth is, like, you're dealing with a lot of people earlier in the career, just getting started. Frankly, even the CS leader themselves may be doing it for the first time. And I think many of the people I've seen the list on this meeting today are super experienced, right? You've run big organizations. You may have run multiple functions. You've dealt with big scale. So you're coming at this from a different vantage point, not better or worse, just different, right? So I think enterprise is different in terms of the experience set of you and your teams. It's different also because, I think if you're a startup, you can you can read a book and just get going, right? We've written a couple of customer success books, people read them. And if you're a startup, it's just a blank slate. You just go, right? You just start going and implement things. But I know for many of you, you have a lot of history in your company. You have a lot of constraints, right? It's not like you can just start everything from scratch. And so I'm hoping you get to hear from people today who figured out how to drive change with constraints. Number three, the truth is that in the startup world, maybe up to a few months ago, it was just infinite money for customer success, right? People could just spend as much as they want, and burn rates were fine, right? And if you don't understand, watch the WeWork movie, We Crashed, which is a great movie, by the way, a great TV show, by the way. But I think for many of you, the truth is that you've got investors, whether it's public investors, private equity, and honestly, they're not excited about you hiring 100 more people this coming year. So you have a lot more pressure in terms of how you spend your money and also how you prove the ROI of what you're spending. And so I do feel like there's a lot of differences. And then just finally, at the end of the day, like there's a lot more exposure. We're gonna hear from Salesforce in just a little bit, right? And the truth is, companies like Salesforce and many of yours, like every step people are watching. Your customers are watching, your investors are watching, right? And that's the reality. That's the benefit of being a larger organization, right? And versus the startups where really there's not that many people watching. So you can make mistakes and you can iterate in the dark. We had fun with the magazine on the right there. That statement from my mom is actually a direct quote. So, but we really think that there's a lot of differences in being a larger organization and a lot of opportunity too. And that's what we're hoping to dive in and explore with you today. Now, we put together a few topics that we see as really consistent across larger organizations embracing CS. Things like, how do we actually drive growth in our customer base between sales, CS, and all the other functions? How do we actually more tightly align to product? How do we use a lot of data because we need to prove the value of what we're doing? How do we manage risk in our accounts, right? That's an oldie but goodie in customer success. How do you get started and manage that first year? And then finally, a topic that's very specific, but I think really relevant is how do we improve the quality of our customer meetings and in particular, our executive business reviews? Now, before we dive into the presentations, we want to give you a little bit of context with some data. So I'm introduced Kelly Capote, our amazing Chief Customer Officer, to talk about some of the benchmark data in customer success.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. I'm so excited to be here. I really cut my teeth in enterprise customer success. So was super, super excited when I heard about this event. So for those of you who haven't heard, we published a customer success index for 2022. It's packed with insights and benchmarks. And if I know one thing about customer success professionals, we love benchmarks and we love to know how we stack up to our peers and learn from one another. So we wanted to do something a little bit special for this audience. So we took the data and we specifically sliced it to just look at the enterprise cohort of companies. So I'm going to step us through a few quick statistics and trends, and then we will keep the show going from there. So this is probably no surprise, but this is an astonishing number. 89% of enterprise companies have customer success present. And I think in particular, what I wanted to point out is if you look, 43% were newly formed in 2021. So it was a really big inflection point for the world of customer success over the past 12 to 18 months. And if we look at the charter of customer success and how it continues to evolve, I think for many, many years, like reducing customer churn has probably showed up on this chart. What we're starting to see kind of pivot and evolve is an increased focus on product adoption. We know if we drive our customers to success and get them sticky, that inherently they're going to grow and expand with us. And then also at the bottom, particularly in the enterprise versus when we looked at all the data, there's an even more increased focus on customer expansion at 67% and improving scale and efficiency at 60%. And I think that's just due to the long tail of business that many enterprise companies are working with. So if we keep moving here, I think most of us have heard net revenue retention at this point in 2022. It has absolutely become the North Star metric when we think about how customer success organizations are metriced and measured. And this really hinges on customer success being that growth engine for our businesses. And then you'll see customer logo churn and gross dollar retention rate are the next two here. But I want to dig a little bit more into expansion. I think that this is an area, if you move to the next slide, that we're continuing to see shift in the world of customer success, particularly in the enterprise. We understand that it's a team sport, and the best way to unlock that expansion potential is through that partnership between your sales and commercial organizations and your success organization. So while we may only see 7% of the pie showing that customer success is involved in the identification phase of handing over those expansion leads, that's still a really big deal. That wasn't the case many years ago. 13% of organizations are actually like the primary point person for closing it. I think that's okay. I do think we'll continue to see it shift. But the big news here is we're starting to get credit where credit is due and put the right account planning and identification mechanisms and incentives in place to make customer success part of that expansion playbook. And then just to bring it home here, none of this, in my opinion, happens. Some of the most sophisticated enterprise organizations is really due to that handshake and that partnership with their customer success operations team. So this realization, very synonymous to sales and RevOps, has continued to grow up. And you can see here, 44% have newly formed CS operations. I think this is an area of investment that we will continue to see increase in years to come. And so with that, I'm going to pass it back to you, Nick.
Awesome. Well, Kelly, that's great data, and we're going to continue to publish more and more. You can find the whole report on our website. But one of the questions we didn't answer in the benchmark is probably one of the top questions we get asked every single day. I know Kelly does, I do. What ratio should I have? What's my ratio of customers to CSM, right? What's that right ratio for different phases? One of the things we realized at Gainsight is we actually have the answer inside Gainsight. Many of you know we have thousands of customers and hundreds of thousands of users, CSMs. And so we have a material part of all CS operation running through Gainsight. And so some of you probably know we a few months ago announced our Horizon AI technology, where we're basically using AI across our platform to understand what's happening in customers. And so we are announcing today what we call Horizon AI Labs, which is basically a new effort we're going to be doing to publish data live from our instance, anonymized, of course, and privacy sensitive, about what's happening in customer success. So just to give you a taste of that, across our enterprise customers, which again is a material chunk of all CS out there, and we define enterprise as more than 100 million of revenue. So for that, some companies that's small, but for most that's at least a decent sized organization. The average high touch CSM manages 21 and change accounts. The average mid touch manages about 50, and the average low touch manages close to 150. Which, by the way, if I had to guess, that would have been close to my guess. I thought high touch might have been a little lower, but these are pretty close to what I would have thought as well. Kelly, my guess is the same as you. So that's cool. So more to come. We're committed to really sharing data so all of us can make better decisions together. But speaking of making better decisions together, there's no company that has more scale and more history in customer success at the enterprise level than the little startup called Salesforce.com in San Francisco. And Niracha Techakunavud is somebody that I've known for a long time. She's been at Salesforce a long time. She was actually involved in customer success, actually right when Gainsight started, like almost 10 years ago. And then she moved into other roles. And she recently, a couple of years ago, took over the customer success team again at Salesforce. And you can imagine the customer success team at Salesforce is thousands of CSMs and incredible scale across all these acquisitions. So I did an interview. We recorded a few days ago because Niracha wasn't available live now, but you have to see this. It's incredible. She talks about multi-product customer success, M&A, all the things that you deal with in integrating CS into your organization. So let's turn it over to the conversation. I'm so excited to introduce Niracha Techakunavud, who's the Executive Vice President of Global Customer Success and Strategy at Salesforce. Welcome, Niracha.
Thank you, Nick. Nice to see you today.
It's so awesome to see you. And all of us, I think everyone in the SaaS world and the software world and in general, the business world, have been inspired by Salesforce in so many different ways. But one of them is that you all are the pioneers of the customer success model. Being pioneers, you've probably done some things that you were right and some things you learned from. But I think all of us can learn from the experiences you've had. So I'm super excited to start this series about Gainsight and Salesforce, kind of helping us all get better at customer success together. So thank you for partnering on this.
I am passionate about this topic. So anything that we can all learn from each other, any option to share is something I really welcome. So thanks for having me, Nick.
Awesome. Well, before we dive into the content, I know that you've been getting back on the road. I have been doing the same. I was in this kind of joyful 2 years of like no travel and my schedule's so easy. And now I've every week back to back to back. So you've been visiting Salesforce customers. Tell us what it's been like getting back on the road and maybe some highlights of cities you visited recently.
Well, I just came back a couple of days ago from Asia. I was in Singapore and Bangkok, and
Cool.
Bangkok is my hometown. And the customers, first face-to-face customer meetings for the first time, sometimes with masks on, was so invigorating. And I will say the masking culture is very strong in Asia. So everyone
Mm.
wears masks all the time, which is a little different from here. So took a little bit of getting used to, but overall, such a joy to be on the road, not only with customers, but our own teammates who haven't gotten together for a very long time.
It's amazing when you get to see people again. It's incredible how we forget just how much power there is. Like when I had the chance to have coffee with you just a couple months ago, and that kind of kicked off this whole idea that I think all of us are learning in customer success together. And I'm sure when you talk to other executives in the profession, we talk about the same topics. We talk about aligning with other functions, which we're going to talk about today. We talk about scaling and digital as kind of one means of scaling. We talk about, navigating things like mergers and acquisitions. So I'm really excited for us to kind of have an ongoing conversation and kick it off today. So today we want to talk about alignment. I feel like that is one of the ultimate buzzwords in like the bingo card of customer success is alignment. Because, at the end of the day, people watching, your jobs aren't just running your team and managing your CSMs or what other functions you have underneath you. Your jobs are actually connecting to the rest of the company and kind of scaling through the rest of the company and aligning with the rest of the company. So I want to kind of give a blueprint about how to think about aligning in a few different ways. We're going to talk a little bit about aligning across product lines and business units, particularly if you're doing acquisitions or new products. We'll talk about aligning from a sales perspective, clearly one of the most important things out there. And we'll talk about aligning from a partner point of view, because many of you are delivering customer success in an ecosystem. So let's kick it off and start talking about handling multiple products. I think Salesforce has a couple products, right? At least more than one, right? I've heard you have a few. I don't know what the official count is. What's the
I've
number?
lost count of what the official count is, but yes, we do have quite a few products.
Well, it's incredible. And you guys have both organically through incubation, creating incredible technologies as well as acquisitions have really changed the software landscape, which is awesome for your business, but probably changes the game for customer success. So how have you thought about incubating and integrating acquired customer success teams into your team?
Well, you're really threading the needle there. You want to have a single motion to the customer, right? That is the most important thing since in customer success, we do put customers at the center of everything we do. However, bringing a new company on board, there are systems issues, model issues, employee morale issues. So you really are threading that needle between letting them settle in a little bit. We don't slam acquisitions in and say, okay, 100% integration right off the bat. We have a more phased process. So the first phase is really, getting to know each other, right? There's obviously some systems migration because putting everything together when teams are on different systems makes it really, really challenging. And then when we get closer, it is bringing the teams in organizationally, but maybe not fully aligning the model yet, but all throughout maintaining that single motion to the customer. That means that we operate with the same methodology, at least at the high level, so that each team has the expertise that they apply to the customer, and we do our best to avoid duplication. Is it completely avoidable? No, right? Again, it's threading that needle so that acquired employees feel that sense of belonging, that sense of purpose, that morale, that they're, not being subsumed into some giant entity, that they feel they have agency. So at Salesforce, we do spend a lot of time on that employee experience. So that's why I call it a little bit threading the needle when you're trying to maintain two principles. One is putting the customer at the center and being aligned around the customer. And two is making sure that all employees are feeling good about their work. So
I
it's
love
kind of
that.
a mixed answer, Nick.
No, I love that. And I think that is the reality. And I think one thing that's really cool about Salesforce and probably a lot of other companies watching is realizing the employee experience does matter a lot. So I'm so glad you brought that up first. One of the other things that matters, I think, in this integration is the nature of the business. You and I talked about this a little bit in our last conversation about how customer success and the kind of need for customer success might be different for, let's say, Marketing Cloud versus Slack versus Tableau versus MuleSoft versus Sales Cloud. How do you think about analyzing the business and then coming up with the right CS model and the right integration model for each business?
We're still on this journey and discovering and learning every day. I think what we had talked about, Nick, was, Salesforce classically started in B2B. So if you look at the change management within, say, a sales methodology in a B2B selling group, how often are you going to be changing that sales process flow?
Mhm.
Maybe once a year, maybe some tweaks partway through, but it's a fairly stable process. And if you then go to the B2C world where we're working in Marketing Cloud and Commerce Cloud, in Marketing Cloud alone, each campaign is a different flow. And people are running hundreds of campaigns. So
Mhm.
the change level is much higher. And understanding that is something that we try to express in how we model the resources supporting, say, Sales and Service Cloud versus a Marketing and Commerce Cloud. So it is a little bit learn as you go though, but we do recognize that the nature of the work and the nature of how the customers use those particular products is very different, and therefore we have different ratios, we have different models that we look at in terms of, say, looking at a cost to serve for different kinds of products.
That's great. And I think that's a good lesson for everyone. Don't assume it's a one size fits all. And also don't forget that you got to work backwards from the customer. What's the customer's need? In marketing technology, the customer's need might be a lot more than, let's say, in a core system of record like Sales Cloud. Now, the other thing that I think you alluded to, but maybe we can click into, is thinking about the employee point of view. I'm imagining you've had periods of time over your many years being involved at Salesforce and customer success where employees felt overwhelmed by having too many products or too many things that they have to be experts at. How do you think about that element of this decision?
The big challenge is when I started at Salesforce, we had like two clouds. So you
Right.
could be an expert in them. Now, if you think about the scope, including, like I mentioned, the marketing and the commerce side of things, plus data integration, plus more analytics, plus collaboration software, you're absolutely right that expecting a generalist to cover all of this with a high level of expertise is nearly impossible. So, what we're really evolving into is a very expertise led model around, hey, we have specialists. We don't just have success managers, we have
Mhm.
specialist success managers, or there is kind of a skill set match between a particular success manager and the customer that they're named to in terms of that customer's footprint. So, if it is, for example, a retail customer that uses a lot of marketing technology and commerce technology, then we would match an SM with that kind of skill set. But again, there's a lot of moving parts and there's a lot of variables, right? So you could have expertise around a cloud, i.e., product area, or you could have expertise around an industry area.
Right.
And that is how we actually have developed a database called Skills 360 that we use along with our professional services colleagues that really track skill sets and expertise and learning goals, for example, so we can quickly identify what the most appropriate resource is. Because again, putting someone who knows the service industry in with a retailer who's not running service, who's thinking much more about martech or commerce, is really a poor fit. So there's a lot of matchmaking involved as well as secondary specialist resources that can be called in for a particular engagement around a particular, say, product area.
I love that concept of the skills database because I think we're all evolving as an industry. And the old model was, hey, a CSM has a certain number of accounts and they manage those accounts and that's it, right? And that model is seeming pretty dated for a lot of multi-product companies. Now we talked about alignment. So we talk about aligning with the products, but obviously one of our core partners in customer success is sales, right? And you mentioned the industry alignment. Salesforce does a great job of industry-oriented selling. So talk about like how you align your org structure with the sales team and how you kind of keep that aligned through all the different fiscal years and changes that happen.
We do absolutely align our organization. So if you think about, we look at the North America region, we have a single, we call them an operating unit, but a single group that aligns to financial services, top to bottom, right? From the biggest to the smallest customer, they just own everything in that SIC codes or that set of SIC codes. And so we align to the financial services operating unit with an entire success team. Now, it doesn't mean that they're the only ones working on it, because the specialized resources are kept in a shared success team around product, especially. So they can then engage across all the different operating units in North America. So if you think about the alignment, there's still the majority of alignment to the selling organization. However, the expertise, especially around discrete skills, are kept in a shared success organization. So we've got kind of a two-tier where there's always kind of a single throat to choke, if you will, with sales, right? They know who the leader, their matching success leader is, and what resources they have. And the success leader actually thinks about coordinating a portfolio of resources, not just the ones that they actually directly manage, but also into the shared success team to be able to support that entire sales region. So we mirror that around the world. We probably have, I forget how many sales regions we have, but we have the same exact number of success leaders.
I love this. Yeah, this is always a trade-off, I think, for most leaders, which is, do you align towards the kind of sales orientation, but then lose some of the specialization and scale, or do you align towards specialization scale and not be aligned to the field? And you've essentially found a way to do both. Order of magnitude, roughly how many people are in the field organizations part of CS versus the shared success part of CS?
Gosh, probably probably the field, like shared success is probably about half of the field organization, the
Okay.
equivalent, about half,
Half,
if
yeah.
I'm remembering correctly. Yeah.
That's great. No, that's good. It gives people kind of just a rough kind of math of how to maybe think about your organization. Could you have a 2/3 of your organization aligned to sales, and then maybe 1/3 in a more shared model where they're coming in on an intervention basis and that type of thing? So I've heard from many Salesforce people that this alignment is so key, because I think that allows, if I'm not mistaken, allows CS leaders for various kind of operating units and regions to then be part of the virtual team for that sales region, right? To be joining the team meetings and kickoffs and things like that, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And a lot of the work we do while we're protecting our base, the seed and grow model, we are also help them generate new bookings. So the
Exactly.
alignment is very, very close, and we're really aware of the big bet accounts, the focus accounts, whatever you want to call them, that the sales leader and that whole sales team is pursuing, because we are aligned in front of the customer.
I love that. All right. Well, last part of alignment, and maybe the hardest, is the ecosystem. So Salesforce doesn't exist on its own. You've created an incredible community of thousands and thousands of partners, including Gainsight, by the way. How does Salesforce's customer success motion integrate into the broader ecosystem?
And I was just in APAC, as I mentioned, and when I was meeting with customers, they didn't distinguish between Salesforce and the partner,
Mhm.
right? They treated us as one entity. So I think that's how we behave. Like our reputation, our business, everything is tied in. Our long-term success is very tied into the partner ecosystem, especially with a consulting partner that's really deploying the Salesforce solution. So from our end, we obviously have a big alliances and channels organization that I used to be a part of. But on our end, we actually staff a role called a partner engagement manager
Mm.
that is really designed with a little bit more of an architect background as opposed to a success manager background. But they're really there to watch over. They're not hands-on implementers, obviously, but they're really there to advise, watch over, and implementation. So reviewing the architecture in the beginning, helping the partner, advising, making sure that the customer feels good about how the implementation is going. Our partner engagement manager role, which we never have enough of, frankly, really kind of watches it over from a Salesforce lens and tries to make sure that partners are really thinking about things, the same way Salesforce does. In fact, our organization, our overall CSG, our customer success group, especially our professional services team, has put together something that we're rolling out called the Salesforce Way, which is really principles, right? We're not going to tell a partner, here's the methodology you must use. That's not really our place. But there are some principles around Salesforce that we really prefer. For example, configuration versus customization. We really prefer doing things in an agile manner because that's kind of the promise that we've made to the customer in the sales cycle. So some things like that and best practices, what we're putting together is to try to make sure our partner ecosystem has all the tools that all of our internal teams do, and then applying that partner engagement manager role to help lightly oversee and make sure things stay on track with an implementation.
I love that. It's the core concept that the customer doesn't see any difference between the partner and Salesforce, or same thing for your partners as well, as if you're watching. I love that. Well, this is just the first of what's going to be a great series where we're going to continue to talk about some of the big questions in customer success around organization and digital success and scale and much more in future episodes. So look forward to talking again. But before then, I always like to close out with some lightning round fun. So we'll do Would You Rather. My kids love doing Would You Rather at home. So we'll do a Would You Rather adult edition here. So, okay, I'm going to give you some Would You Rathers. You just choose which one you'd rather choose out of the two. Would you rather be able to teleport or time travel?
Time travel.
Me too. Future or past, by the way?
Past.
Past. Okay, I'm future.
Future's scary. Future's a little scary.
I'm future, but okay, that was my second one. Future or past. Okay. Well, both of us do like music. Would you rather be a singer or an actor? A singer,
all the way.
All right, there you go. You and me as backups to Taylor Swift. One day we'll do it.
Yes. It's a pact.
Okay, speak in every human language or be able to talk to animals.
Human language. Human language.
Oh, that would be very useful for all your travel for sure. For me, I'll do the animals. I'm very interested in what my dog has to say. And then finally, would you rather be able to, if you had to choose one, you can talk like Yoda forever from Star Wars or Darth Vader forever from Star Wars?
Yoda I am.
Yo, there you go. Very well done. I like that. I like how you did it. Well, there you go. Well, Yoda is very wise about the universe, and you're very wise about customer success. So, Naracha, this has been incredible, and it's just the beginning. We look forward to having all of you watch our next episode. Until then, here's to your success. Thanks, Naracha.
Thank you, Nick. Thanks, everyone.